On April 18, 2026, something quietly historic happened in Washington. The President of the United States signed an executive order on psychedelics, substances that, for 50 years, were treated as the legal equivalent of heroin. The order didn't legalize anything, it didn't approve a single new drug, and yet almost overnight, it changed the trajectory of mental health treatment in America. Here's what it actually does and what it doesn't. 1 in 5 American adults lives with a mental illness. Depression rates are at record highs. Veteran suicide remains an open wound. And for 30 years, psychiatry has had almost no genuinely new tools. That's the backdrop you need to understand the White House move, because to its supporters, this executive order isn't about drugs, it's about an emergency. Welcome to Psychedelics University. I'm going to walk you through the entire order in plain English, explain which substances are affected, and tell you what this realistically changes and what it doesn't. Chapter 1. What the executive order actually says. The official title is Accelerating Medical Treatments for Serious Mental Illness. It's about 4 pages long, and it does 5 concrete things. First, it directs the FDA to issue what are called Commissioner's National Priority Vouchers to psychedelic drugs that already have breakthrough therapy designation. In plain English, it puts these drugs at the front of the FDA review line, targeting a 1 to 2 month review timeline instead of the standard 10 months. Second, it instructs the FDA and the DEA to build a pathway for eligible patients to access investigational psychedelics under the Federal Right to Try Act. Third, it sets aside $50 million to match investments from state governments running psychedelic programs. Oregon and Colorado have operational programs. Texas just passed a law funding Ibogaine research. This federal money is designed to amplify those state-level moves. Fourth, it requires Health and Human Services, the FDA, and the VA to share data to speed up clinical trials, especially for veterans. And fifth, it tells the Attorney General to start reviewing Schedule I psychedelics that complete Phase 3 trials so they can be rescheduled the moment the FDA approves them. So, in summary, faster FDA review, expanded patient access, federal-state cooperation, more data sharing, and a path to rescheduling. Chapter 2. The 5 psychedelics most affected. The order doesn't name every psychedelic. It mostly applies to compounds that already have breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA. Here are the 5 most affected. 1. Psilocybin, the active compound in psychedelic mushrooms. 2 pharmaceutical formulations matter here. Compass Pathways Comp 360 is in late Phase 3 trials for treatment-resistant depression. USONA Institute is studying single-dose synthetic psilocybin for major depression. Both have breakthrough therapy status. Both are likely to be among the first to use the new priority vouchers. Possible FDA approval is expected by late 2026 or early 2027. 2. MDMA. The story here is complicated. The FDA rejected Lykos Therapeutics' MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD in 2024, citing trial design concerns. MDMA itself is currently back to Schedule I status with no immediate approval pathway. But the executive order's framework could open expanded access for some patients. 3. Methylone, specifically TSND-201 from Transcend Therapeutics. This is the surprise winner of the new initiative. Methylone is a close cousin of MDMA, and in May 2026, results published in JAMA Psychiatry showed a 9.64-point placebo-adjusted reduction in PTSD severity scores at day 64. The White House initiative specifically granted Transcend a priority review voucher. Many analysts now consider methylone the leading PTSD candidate. 4. Ibogaine. Derived from the iboga plant, studied for opioid use disorder and PTSD, particularly among veterans with traumatic brain injuries. The executive order mentions Ibogaine by name twice. The FDA has also greenlit a phase 1 study of Ibogaine, a related compound, for alcohol use disorder. Texas already requires publicly funded Ibogaine research. Important caveat: Ibogaine carries real cardiac risks. We'll do a full deep dive on this one. 5. LSD-based therapeutics, specifically MM120, a lab-made form of LSD, in phase 3 trials for generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorder. Initial results are expected in the second half of 2026. 5 compounds, different mechanisms, different conditions, one shared characteristic. They're all now on an accelerated track because of this order. Chapter 3, the right to try question. This is the part of the executive order that legal scholars are still debating. The Right to Try Act was signed into law in 2018. It allows patients with life-threatening illnesses who have exhausted approved treatments to access investigational drugs that have completed phase 1 trials. The drug manufacturer has to be willing to provide it. The FDA doesn't pre-approve the access. Patients sign informed consent. The executive order directs the FDA and DEA to facilitate and establish a right-to-try pathway for psychedelics, including by name Ibogaine. Here's what that could mean. Some patients with severe, treatment-resistant conditions might be able to legally access investigational psychedelics through their physicians before formal FDA approval. Here's what it doesn't mean. It's not a free-for-all. The patient still has to have a qualifying, life-threatening condition. The drug still has to meet basic safety requirements, which Harvard legal scholars have pointed out Ibogaine, specifically, has not clearly met. The drug company still has to be willing to provide the substance, and the DEA still has to issue Schedule I handling authorizations. Translation: it's a narrow door, not an open one. Chapter 4. What this doesn't change. An executive order is powerful, but it has limits. Here's what this one doesn't do. It doesn't legalize anything. Every substance discussed remains Schedule I, federally illegal to possess outside of approved research or clinical access. It doesn't guarantee FDA approval. The FDA still has to evaluate safety and efficacy data. The 2024 rejection of Lykos's MDMA application is a reminder that breakthrough designations don't equal approval. It doesn't address reimbursement. Even if these drugs get approved, insurance coverage for psychedelic therapy is a separate, unsolved problem. Sessions can run thousands of dollars. It doesn't change DEA scheduling on its own. The DEA is already required by statute to reschedule drugs within 90 days of FDA approval. And it doesn't apply to recreational, religious, or underground use. This is strictly about FDA-regulated medical pathways. So if you've seen headlines saying, "Trump legalized psychedelics," that's wrong. What he did is real, but it's narrower than the headlines suggest. Chapter 5. Why this matters. Here's the honest answer to why this order matters, even with all those limits. Mental illness in the United States is a slow-rolling catastrophe. About 49 million American adults experience a mental illness each year. Treatment-resistant depression, meaning depression that doesn't respond to at least 2 standard antidepressants, affects roughly 1 in 3 people who try treatment. PTSD affects an estimated 12 million Americans, including hundreds of thousands of veterans. The standard tools: SSRIs, talk therapy, hospitalization. They help many people, but they don't help everyone. And the rate of new treatment innovation has been historically slow. Psychedelic-assisted therapy isn't a miracle, and it isn't appropriate for everyone. But the early clinical evidence across psilocybin, MDMA-like compounds, Ibogaine, and others has been strong enough that the FDA itself granted multiple breakthrough therapy designations. That's not a political designation. That's an evidentiary one. The executive order doesn't bypass science. It removes some of the procedural friction that's been keeping these therapies from completing trials and reaching patients who have run out of other options. Whether you support psychedelics or remain skeptical, that's the actual stakes. Speed, access, and the question of who gets help and how soon. Chapter 6. What comes next? Here's the timeline to watch. Late 2026 to early 2027, Phase 3 results expected for Compass Pathways' Psilocybin program and several others. If positive, formal FDA applications follow. 2027, first real test of the Priority Voucher Program. If Comp 360 is approved, psilocybin could become a federally legal prescription medication for treatment-resistant depression, a historic first. Ongoing, state-level expansion. Oregon and Colorado already have operational programs. Texas-funded Ibogaine research moves forward. More states are introducing legislation. Watch closely. The Veterans Affairs System, where Ibogaine research for PTSD and TBI is being pushed hardest. The next 18 months are likely to be the most consequential period for psychedelic medicine in the past 60 years.
Whatever you think of the politics, take a moment to sit with this idea. For the first time in 2 generations, the country is treating these molecules not as a danger to be controlled, but as a possible answer to suffering that has lasted far too long. Whether the answer holds up is something the science still has to tell us. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep learning.